My own son mixed sedatives into my dinner while a fake lawyer waited in the living room to steal my $2 million home. But what Adrian didn't know was that I had switched the plates without him noticing. While he waited for me to lose control, I was recording every word of his confession. My name is Evelyn Hayes. I'm 69 years old, and for 45 years I built a business empire from scratch. I sold my company in 2022 for $8 million, and I retired to enjoy what I thought would be a peaceful old age with my only son, Adrian. How wrong I was. It all started in September of 2024, when I noticed strange changes in my son's behavior. Adrian, 42, had always been an ambitious young man but was financially disorganized. However, something different was happening now. His visits, which used to be sporadic and casual, became frequent and calculated. He would arrive at my house in a wealthy Chicago suburb with a forced smile and very specific questions about my properties. "Mom, have you updated the house documents lately?" he asked one Tuesday afternoon while we were having coffee on the terrace. "You have everything in order in case something happens?" The question struck me as odd. Why would a 42-year-old man suddenly worry about his mother's paperwork? My business instincts, sharpened by decades of complex negotiations, began sending me warning signals. Over the following weeks, I observed disturbing patterns. Adrian would discreetly look through the papers on my desk when he thought I wasn't looking. His phone conversations would end abruptly when I entered the room. His wife, Nicole, avoided eye contact with me and seemed nervous in my presence. The turning point came on the 25th of October 2024. Adrian arrived around 7 inches the evening, visibly agitated. His hands trembled slightly when he greeted me, and I noticed beads of sweat on his forehead despite the cool autumn weather. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot lately," he said as he sat down heavily on the living room sofa. "Life is very uncertain. You should consider transferring some properties to avoid future tax problems." His words sounded rehearsed, as if he had practiced this speech in front of a mirror. I decided to play along to get more information. "What exactly are you referring to, Adrian?" "Well, the house is worth over $2 million now. If something happened to you, the estate taxes would be brutal. It would be smarter to do the transfer now, while you're in a perfectly sound state of mind." The phrase, "sound state of mind," echoed in my head like an alarm bell. Why would he specifically mention my mental state? A business owner doesn't survive 4 decades in the business world without developing a sixth sense for manipulation. That night, after Adrian left, I made a decision that would change everything. I contacted George Pierce, my trusted lawyer for 20 years, and requested an urgent meeting for the next morning. "George, I need you to discreetly investigate my son's finances," I explained in his downtown office. "Something isn't right, and my experience tells me I need to be prepared." George, a meticulous 58-year-old man, nodded understandingly. "Evelyn, in my 30-year career, I've seen many families destroyed by money. I'll help you protect yourself." I also contacted Stephen Reed, a private investigator recommended by George. My instructions were clear. I wanted to know everything about Adrian's recent activities, his contacts, his financial movements, and any hidden debts. The results came faster than expected, and were more devastating than I could have imagined. The report from Stephen Reed arrived at my personal office on the 3rd of November 2024 in a sealed manila envelope. It contained photographs, bank documents, and call records that would forever destroy the image I had of my son. Adrian owed $340,000 to illegal loan sharks from a rough part of the city. The photos showed him nervously entering clandestine locations, meeting with intimidating-looking men whom Stephen had identified as members of an organization dedicated to violent debt collection. But the most disturbing thing wasn't the amount owed, but the deadline. He had until December 15th to pay the debt in full or face irreversible consequences, according to threats these individuals had made in phone conversations legally intercepted by my investigator. "Your son has been lying about his employment situation for months," Stephen explained in his office. "The consulting firm he supposedly ran closed in July. He hasn't had a regular income since then and has been living off increasingly dangerous loans." The photographs revealed secret meetings between Adrian and a man identified as Ivan Cross, 55, with a criminal record for document forgery. According to the report, this individual had posed as a lawyer in at least 3 previous scams, all targeting wealthy, elderly people. My blood ran cold when Stephen showed me transcripts of recorded conversations between Adrian and this criminal. They had been planning my temporary incapacitation using sedatives to force the transfer of my properties. The plan included Nicole's participation as a witness, claiming I had lost my mental faculties and needed urgent family help. "Mom has been very confused lately," Adrian had said in a recording from October 26th. "It will be easy to convince her to sign if she's disoriented enough. Once we have the house, we can sell it quickly and pay off all the debts." Hearing these words from my own son brought a mix of pain and fury I had never experienced. The child I had raised, educated and supported for decades, was planning to drug me to steal my life's savings, but my pain quickly turned into strategic determination. If Adrian thought he could outsmart a businesswoman who had built an empire from scratch, he was gravely mistaken. I was going to teach him a lesson he would remember for the rest of his life. I immediately summoned George Pierce to design my legal counteroffensive. "I need you to prepare preventive documentation to protect all my assets," I instructed him. "I want reversible bank blocks that I can activate with a single phone call." I also contacted my accountant to discreetly transfer certain investments to international accounts, inaccessible without my physical presence, and multiple biometric verifications. If Adrian wanted to play dirty, he would find out that his mother had perfected these tactics long before he was born. The most important element of my strategy would be Commissioner Michael Torres, an old friend from my college days who now headed the Economic Crimes Division of the police department. Michael had been at my wedding and was Adrian's godfather. Explaining that my own son was planning to drug me was one of the most painful conversations of my life. "Evelyn, this is extremely serious," Michael said in his office. "Attempted aggravated fraud, use of substances to coerce, document forgery. We're talking about several years in prison." I gave him copies of all the evidence collected by Stephen and explained my plan to catch the criminals in the act. Michael discreetly assigned 2 specialized officers to monitor my home and be ready to intervene at the exact moment. Over the next few days, I maintained a flawless performance in front of Adrian. I feigned growing concern about financial matters, casually mentioned my forgetfulness about certain things, and acted slightly more confused than usual. My son took the bait completely, increasing his visits and pressing more and more about the urgency of organizing my documents. On the 12th of December 2024, Adrian finally proposed the dinner I knew would come. "Mom, why don't we have dinner together tomorrow? We could talk calmly about those house papers. I'll cook something special." The trap was set. My son had fallen exactly where I wanted him. The 13th of December 2024 will be a date forever etched in my memory. I woke up that morning knowing my own son would try to drug me that night, but he had no idea that every move he would make had already been calculated and countered by my strategy. At 9 inches the morning, I activated the first component of my defensive plan. I called George from my secure line and spoke the keywords we had agreed upon. "The documents are ready for review." Immediately, all my main bank accounts were blocked for transfers, except for transactions requiring my physical presence with biometric verification. My accountant received the second coded call. Within hours, my most important investments were moved to Swiss and Luxembourg financial institutions, completely inaccessible without complex procedures that would take weeks to complete. Adrian could get my signature on 1,000 documents, but he wouldn't get a single cent of my real assets. The technological preparation was equally meticulous. I discreetly installed 3 high-definition cameras in the dining room and living room, connected to an external server that would stream everything in real time to George and Commissioner Michael Torres. Every word, every gesture, every second of the betrayal would be documented with professional quality. In my jacket, I concealed a state-of-the-art recording device, as small as a coin, but capable of capturing conversations with crystal clarity, even from several feet away. My cell phone was configured to automatically send my GPS location every 30 seconds to the police surveillance team. But the most brilliant element of my strategy required personal physical preparation. For the entire previous week, I had been practicing the effects of light sedation, slow movements, slurred speech, apparent confusion, gradual loss of motor control. I had studied medical videos on benzodiazepine intoxication to perfect my performance. At 6 inches the evening, Adrian arrived punctually at my house. He brought a grocery bag with ingredients to prepare roast lamb with potatoes, one of my favorite dishes since childhood. The irony was bitter to me. He would use my favorite food as a vehicle to drug me. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling today?" He greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His hands trembled imperceptibly as he placed the bag on the kitchen counter. "Very well, son. It's wonderful that you're cooking for your old mother," I replied with complete naturalness, observing his every move while he believed he had absolute control of the situation. For the next 40 minutes, Adrian prepared dinner with unusual concentration. He was normally careless in the kitchen, but that night he measured every ingredient with surgical precision. I watched him discreetly from the living room as he worked, noticing how he constantly checked his cell phone as if waiting for confirmation of something important. At 7:20, my son served 2 identical plates of roast lamb. He placed them on the dining room table with a strange ceremony, making sure I sat in the specific place he had chosen. Without him noticing, while he was looking for wine in the cellar, I quickly switched the plates. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived. Adrian returned with a bottle of a 2016 Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, one of my favorite vintages, and poured the glasses with hands that could no longer hide their nervousness. "Let's toast to family," he said, raising his glass, though his voice sounded tense and forced. "To family," I repeated, clinking my glass against his while looking him directly in the eyes. In that instant, I saw something that broke my heart. My son had definitively decided to betray me. There was no turning back. We began to eat in an uncomfortable silence. Adrian barely touched his food, too anxious watching every bite I supposedly took from my poisoned plate. After 10 minutes, he began to get visibly impatient. "Are you feeling all right, Mom? You seem a bit slow tonight," he commented with completely false concern. It was my moment to begin the performance of my life. I let my shoulders droop slightly, narrowed my eyes a bit, and replied with a voice just perceptibly slower. "Yes, son, I feel strange, as if I'm suddenly very sleepy." Adrian's eyes lit up with a sinister satisfaction I will never forget. My own son was happy to see me apparently losing control of my faculties. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:30, just as he had planned. "That must be the lawyer," Adrian said, jumping immediately from his chair with an urgency that confirmed all my suspicions. His face showed a mix of relief and barely contained anxiety as he headed towards the front door. I intensified my performance, letting my head wobble slightly forward, as if fighting against a growing drowsiness. "What lawyer, son? I don't remember scheduling anyone," I mumbled in a slurred voice while discreetly activating the recording on my cell phone. "Relax, Mom. It's someone who's here to help us with the house papers." "I told you it was important to resolve this soon," Adrian replied from the hallway, and I could hear him unlocking the deadbolt. The door opened and a stout man of about 55 entered, dressed in a dark suit and carrying a black leather briefcase that was meant to give him a professional appearance. It was exactly Ivan Cross, the fraudster identified in Stephen Reed's photographs. "Good evening, I'm Mr. Cross, the attorney." He introduced himself with a deep, authoritative voice, extending a hand towards me while assessing my apparent condition. "Your son has explained the urgency of formalizing certain documents before unnecessary complications arise." I allowed my hand to tremble slightly as I shook his, watching how his eyes immediately focused on my supposed symptoms of incapacitation. This criminal had perfected his technique by preying on vulnerable elderly people, but tonight he had found the wrong prey. "Evelyn seems a bit disoriented tonight," Adrian commented with a theatrical concern that turned my stomach. "She's been very confused lately, haven't you, Mom? That's why it's so important to resolve these issues while we still can do it simply." The fake lawyer nodded understandingly as he opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder with documents that looked official at first glance. "I understand the situation perfectly. It's very common in elderly people. Fortunately, the preventive transfer of properties is a routine procedure that protects both the owner and the family." I leaned forward, feigning difficulty in focusing, but in reality, I was reading every line of the fraudulent documents. The forgery was impressive. Apparently official seals, letterhead from the State Bar Association, a convincing serial number. However, my business experience allowed me to immediately spot the subtle irregularities that betrayed their criminal origin. This seems very complicated," I mumbled, vaguely pointing at the papers. "Can't we do this another day when I feel better?" "Mom, we've already talked about this." Adrian intervened with a firmness he had never used with me before. "It's important to do it now. Mr. Cross came especially tonight because he's going on vacation for 2 weeks tomorrow. If we wait, very costly tax problems could arise." Ivan Cross spread the documents on the dining room table, discreetly moving our dinner plates to make space. "Exactly. The IRS has really tightened the regulations this year. A late transfer could cost you several $100,000 in penalties. The trap was unfolding exactly as they had planned. Adrian stood to my right, gently pressing my shoulder in a gesture that was meant to be affectionate but was actually intended to physically control me. The fraudster stood in front of me, partially blocking my view of the exit door. "Look, Evelyn," the fake lawyer continued, pointing specifically to a clause in the contract. "This document simply transfers the ownership of the house to your son, Adrian, while you retain a life estate. You can live here for the rest of your days, but legally the property will be protected from any future tax claims." It was a sophisticated lie. The documents in front of me transferred the property completely, without any protection for my right to live there. Once signed, Adrian could sell the house immediately and leave me on the street with no legal recourse to get it back. "I don't know. My head hurts so much," I groaned, bringing my hands to my temples and letting my body sway slightly in the chair. "Everything is so blurry. Can't you explain it to me more slowly?" "Of course, Mom," Adrian replied with exaggerated patience, but I could detect the growing desperation in his voice. Time was running out, and I wasn't cooperating according to his expectations. "It's very simple. You just need to sign here and here," he said, pointing to 2 lines marked with red X's. The climactic moment had arrived. The fake lawyer pulled out a gold fountain pen and ceremoniously placed it between my trembling fingers. "Evelyn, please, sign where your son indicates. It's a routine procedure that will greatly benefit your family." I took the pen with a deliberately unsteady hand and slowly brought it towards the first signature space. Adrian held his breath, his eyes fixed on my movements, like a predator watching its wounded prey. But then I dropped the pen on the floor with a seemingly clumsy gesture. "Sorry, it slipped," I mumbled, slowly bending down to pick it up. Impatience began to take hold of both criminals. "Mom, please concentrate," Adrian insisted, retrieving the pen from the floor and placing it back in my right hand. His tone had lost all pretense of filial patience and now showed a desperate urgency that confirmed the seriousness of his financial situation. The fake lawyer ostentatiously checked his wristwatch, a calculated gesture to increase the psychological pressure. "Evelyn, I understand you're feeling unwell, but we really need to complete this transaction tonight. I have other important commitments early tomorrow morning. I decided to take my performance to the next level." I allowed my head to tilt to one side, as if fighting an irresistible drowsiness, and when I looked up, I feigned difficulty focusing on their faces. Who are you again?" I asked, addressing the fraudster with a slurred voice. "I don't remember meeting you before. Adrian, why is there a stranger in my house so late?" My son's frustration became palpable. His fists clenched involuntarily, and I noticed him exchange a meaningful look with his accomplice. They had underestimated the time needed to execute their plan, and my passive resistance was pushing them to their breaking point. "He's the lawyer, Mom. I've explained it to you 5 times, Adrian replied with a harshness he had never shown towards me before. "You need to sign these documents to protect the house from taxes." "Don't you understand that I'm trying to help you?" Ivan Cross intervened with a professional smile that failed to hide his growing irritation. "Mrs. Hayes, I understand your confusion, but it really is a very simple procedure. Thousands of American families make these preventive transfers every year. It only requires your signature in 2 specific places." I leaned towards the documents, feigning considerable effort to read the letters. But in reality, I was memorizing every detail of the scam for my future court testimony. The forged seals, the invented bar association numbers, the predatory clauses written to completely strip me of my property rights. "The letters are so small," I complained, squinting. "Don't you have a magnifying glass around here? In my day, contracts were written in legible print." "For God's sake," Adrian exploded, finally losing his composure. "It's normal print, Mom. Anyone can read it without any problems." His emotional outburst was exactly what I had been waiting for. The mask of the concerned son had finally fallen, revealing the desperate predator underneath. The recording device in my jacket would capture every word of this transformation for the police investigation. The fraudster shot a warning glance at Adrian, understanding that shouting could alert potential neighbors. "Calm down, young man. Your mother is experiencing the natural effects of evening fatigue. It's completely understandable at her age." Then he turned to me with a syrupy voice meant to be reassuring. "Evelyn, allow me to help you. I will show you exactly where you need to sign. You don't need to read the whole document. Trust that your son has your best interests at heart. It was the perfect moment to elicit the most incriminating confessions. I shakily raised the pen and moved it towards the first signature space. But then I stopped abruptly, as if I had remembered something important. Wait, does this mean I won't be the owner of my house anymore? I asked with apparent momentary lucidity. I've lived here for 25 years. This house holds all my memories with my late husband, Michael. The direct question put them in a delicate situation. Lying openly about the legal consequences would constitute an additional crime of aggravated fraud, but telling the truth might make me refuse to sign. No, Mom, Adrian lied without hesitation. You'll still be the owner. We're just changing some papers to protect you from the IRS. You can live here until you're very, very old. Exactly, confirmed the fake lawyer. The property will functionally remain yours. This document simply creates a preventive legal shield against future tax claims. It's a very smart measure that will save you a lot of money. Their lies were recorded with crystal clarity on my recording device. I had confessions from both criminals, fraudulently denying the true consequences of the document they were trying to make me sign. I feigned relief and satisfaction with their explanations. Oh well, if Adrian says it's okay, then I trust him. You've always been a good son. The irony of my words was not lost on either of them, though for completely different reasons. I brought the pen to the paper again. But this time, I allowed my hand to shake so violently that it was impossible to draw a legible signature. After several failed attempts, I let my arms fall with apparent frustration. I can't. My hands won't obey me tonight, I moaned in a broken voice. My head is spinning. We can do it tomorrow when I feel better. Adrian's desperation reached a critical point that would finally reveal the true nature of his plan. We can't wait until tomorrow! Adrian roared, completely losing control, his voice filled with a panic that echoed through the house. The deadlines are up. If we don't solve this tonight, I'll lose. We'll lose everything. His unintentional confession was music to my ears. The recording device would capture every nuance of desperation in his voice, confirming his motivation was purely criminal, not filial. Ivan Cross shot him a furious look, understanding that his young accomplice had just revealed compromising information. He tried to regain control of the situation with a forced smile directed at me. What your son means to say is that the tax benefits of this transfer have very strict deadlines. After December 15th, the tax rates will increase significantly. But Adrian could no longer contain himself. The pressure of his debts, the looming deadline, and my apparent resistance had broken his self-control. He moved closer to my chair, his eyes bloodshot and his hands trembling. Mom, listen to me carefully, he said, grabbing me by the shoulders with a force that bordered on physical aggression. I owe $340,000 to some very dangerous people. If I don't pay them by December 15th, they're going to kill me. Do you understand? They're literally going to kill me. The silence that followed his desperate confession was deafening. Ivan Cross closed his eyes for a moment, knowing his accomplice had just destroyed any pretense of legitimacy. Adrian, shut up! The fraudster hissed through his teeth. But it was too late. My son continued his emotional breakdown, revealing details I already knew but needed to hear from his own lips to complete the legal evidence. The company went bankrupt in July, he confessed, tears streaming down his cheeks. I lost all the money gambling online. First it was $5,000, then $10,000, then $50,000. I couldn't stop. I kept betting more to win back what I lost, but I only sank deeper. His words confirmed exactly the information from Stephen Reed's report. Compulsive gambling, escalating debts with illegal lenders, imminent death threats. The loan sharks don't mess around, Mom, he continued sobbing. They've shown me pictures of what they do to people who don't pay. They break their bones one by one until they pay, and if they can't pay, they disappear forever. Ivan Cross attempted one last maneuver to salvage the operation. Mrs. Hayes, your son is experiencing an understandable nervous breakdown. Financial pressures can deeply affect anyone, but that's precisely why it's so important to resolve this situation tonight. I decided to intensify the psychological pressure by feigning greater confusion. I don't understand. Is Adrian in trouble? Does someone want to hurt my son? Yes! Adrian shouted, falling to his knees beside my chair. That's why I need you to sign. It's the only way to save me. The house is worth $2.2 million. I can sell it quickly, pay off all the debts, and start over. I'm begging you, Mom. The spectacle was pathetic and heartbreaking at the same time. To see my own son, the child I had raised with unconditional love, begging me on his knees to hand over my assets to solve problems caused by his own irresponsibility. But if I sign, where will I live? I asked with a trembling voice, pretending not to fully understand the implications. Adrian's final mask completely fell away. "I don't care where you live!" he screamed with a cruelty that chilled me to the bone. "You can go to a nursing home. You can live on the street. The only thing that matters to me now is saving my life." His words echoed in the dining room like slaps in the face. The son I had educated, supported, and loved unconditionally for 42 years had just publicly declared that I mattered less to him than his own survival. Ivan Cross understood that the situation had completely spiraled out of control. "Adrian, get a hold of yourself. This isn't going as we planned." "To hell with the plans!" my son roared. "The old woman is too drugged to understand what's happening. Grab her hand and force her to sign." The suggestion of physical coercion marked the point of no return in his criminal downfall. The fraudster hesitated for a moment, calculating the legal risks of proceeding with explicit violence. "I don't know if we should," Ivan mumbled, but Adrian had already lost all sanity. "Do it now or we both go to the grave," he howled, grabbing my right wrist with brutal force. "Sign these damn papers once and for all." The real physical pain in my arm helped me simulate an authentic groan of vulnerability. But internally, I was smiling with absolute satisfaction. My son had just provided the final pieces of evidence needed for his own conviction. It was the perfect moment to activate the final phase of my strategy. At that precise moment, as Adrian squeezed my wrist with desperate violence and the fake lawyer debated whether to flee or proceed with physical coercion, I decided I had collected enough incriminating evidence. It was time to reveal my true nature. I slowly sat up in my chair, straightening my shoulders and miraculously regaining complete lucidity in my eyes. The transformation was so dramatic that both criminals instinctively backed away, confused by my sudden recovery. "Let go of my hand, Adrian," I ordered, with a firm, authoritative voice I hadn't used all night. "And you, fake lawyer, sit down immediately or I'll call the police." The bewilderment on their faces was absolute. Adrian loosened his grip, looking at me as if he'd seen a ghost. "Mom? What's happening? You're not dizzy anymore?" "I was never dizzy, son," I replied, with an icy calm that starkly contrasted with the hysteria I had just witnessed. "I switched the plates while you were getting the wine. You ate the drugged dinner, not me." The color drained completely from Adrian's face. His eyes darted frantically between his empty plate and mine, gradually understanding the magnitude of my strategic maneuver. "Impossible," mumbled Ivan Cross, but his expression revealed he was beginning to suspect the truth. "You acted as if you were sedated all night." 45 years building a business empire taught me how to act when necessary," I retorted, pulling out my cell phone and showing them the recording app that had been running all evening. "And it also taught me to meticulously document all important transactions." The phone screen showed 2 hours and 37 minutes of continuous recording. Every confession, every threat, every detail of their criminal plan had been recorded in professional quality. "I have your complete confessions recorded, about the gambling debts, the death threats, the forgery of legal documents, and the attempted fraud using substances to incapacitate me," I continued, standing up with the dignity of an experienced entrepreneur. "I also have it recorded how you suggested physical coercion when your initial plan failed." Adrian stumbled backward as if he'd been physically struck. "No, it can't be. I saw you. You were confused." "I was completely lucid and in control of the situation at all times," I declared, walking to the cabinet where I kept my important documents. "In fact, I've known exactly what you were planning for 3 weeks." I opened the top drawer and pulled out a thick folder containing all of Stephen Reed's investigations. Photos of Adrian with the loan sharks, transcripts of phone conversations, bank records of his debts, Ivan Cross's criminal record. "Private investigator, specialized lawyer, trusted police commissioner," I listed, placing the documents on the table where moments before their fraudulent papers had been. "They have all been working for weeks to build an airtight legal case against you both." The fake lawyer tried one last desperate maneuver. "Mrs. Hayes, this is a misunderstanding. I only came to help with some documents. I knew nothing about debts or your son's personal problems." Ivan Cross, 55 years old, 3 prior convictions for forging legal documents, I recited from memory, pointing directly at him. Specializing in scams against wealthy elderly people in this city and neighboring communities. Do you want me to continue with your complete criminal history? His face fell as he realized his identity and background had been thoroughly investigated. There was no possible escape from the trap I had meticulously built around him. Adrian, meanwhile, had slumped into a chair with his head in his hands, finally understanding that he had been intellectually outmaneuvered by his own mother in a devastating way. "You knew what I was going to do all this time?" he asked in a broken voice. "I knew you were up to something since September," I confirmed. "Your questions about documents, your calculated visits, your nervousness, the mysterious calls. A successful entrepreneur doesn't survive 4 decades without learning to detect potential betrayals." I walked to the dining room window and slightly pulled back the curtain. On the street, discreetly parked, were 2 official police vehicles with their lights off but engines running. "Commissioner Michael Torres has been monitoring this conversation in real time," I announced, turning back to them. "His officers are waiting for my signal to proceed with the arrests." The silence that followed was sepulchral. Both criminals simultaneously understood they had fallen into a perfectly orchestrated trap by someone whose strategic intelligence they had catastrophically underestimated. Adrian slowly raised his head to look at me, and in his eyes, I saw something that broke my heart. The recognition that he had forever lost his mother's love and respect. I picked up my cell phone and dialed Commissioner Michael Torres's direct number. The call was answered on the first ring, confirming he had been waiting for my contact throughout the operation. "Michael, it's Evelyn. Code Green." "Proceed with the arrests immediately," I said with the authority of someone who had run companies for decades. Through the window, I could see the officers silently exiting their vehicles and strategically positioning themselves around my property. In less than 2 minutes, the front doorbell rang with the characteristic authority of a police intervention. "Police! Open up immediately or we will force entry!" A magnified voice boomed from outside. Adrian and Ivan exchanged desperate glances, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. My house had been completely surrounded by professionals experienced in capturing criminals. "Don't try to run," I warned them, walking to the front door. "I have security cameras around the entire perimeter and officers stationed at every possible exit. Your only option is to surrender peacefully." I opened the door, and Commissioner Michael Torres entered, accompanied by 4 officers specializing in economic crimes. His presence commanded immediate respect, with 3 decades of police experience etched into every line of his weathered face. "Good evening, Evelyn." "Are the suspects in the dining room?" Michael asked with the professional efficiency he had developed over years of friendship and mutual collaboration. "Yes, Michael. Adrian Hayes and Ivan Cross. Both have fully confessed to their crimes over the last 2 hours. I have high-quality audio recordings and photographic documentation of all the fraudulent documents." The officers quickly dispersed through the house, following established protocols to secure the crime scene and prevent the destruction of evidence. "Adrian Hayes and Ivan Cross," Michael declared, entering the dining room with absolute authority. "You are under arrest for the crimes of attempted aggravated fraud, forgery of official documents, use of substances to coerce, and criminal conspiracy." My son remained seated, completely defeated, as the steel handcuffs closed around his wrists. He offered no physical resistance, but his eyes shot me a look of pure hatred I will never forget. "Mom, how could you do this to me?" he mumbled in a broken voice. "I'm your only son. You were supposed to love me unconditionally." "I loved you unconditionally for 42 years, I replied with a coldness that surprised even myself. "But love doesn't require me to let you drug me and steal my life's work." Ivan Cross was trying to negotiate with the officers, promising information on other victims in exchange for a reduced charge. His servile attitude contrasted sharply with the arrogance he had displayed when he thought he was in control. "Commissioner, I can give you names of other elderly people who have been scammed using similar methods," he babbled as he was handcuffed. "I have complete files at my home with at least 20 cases from the last 3 years. That information will be assessed during the judicial process," Michael replied, not committing to any deal. "For now, you will both remain in preventive custody until the investigation is complete." One of the officers approached with an evidence bag, meticulously collecting the forged documents, the remains of the drugged dinner, and the sedative pills found in Adrian's jacket pocket. "Mrs. Hayes," the officer asked me, "do you require medical attention? We know you were the victim of an attempted poisoning." No, thank you. I switched the plates before they could affect me, I explained while signing the preliminary statement. My health is completely normal. Michael personally supervised the collection of evidence, ensuring every item was correctly catalogued to build an irrefutable legal case. Evelyn, tomorrow you'll need to come to the station to complete your official statement, he informed me while directing the operation. With the evidence you've gathered, this is one of the most well-documented cases of attempted family fraud we've ever seen. As they led Adrian towards the police car, he turned one last time towards me. His eyes no longer showed hatred, but a desperate plea for a forgiveness he knew he would never get. Mom, please, the loan sharks will kill me in prison. They have contacts everywhere. If I don't pay them, they'll order my murder from the outside. For a moment, my mother's heart faltered, hearing the genuine terror in his voice, but then I remembered his words. I don't care where you live. You can live on the street. You should have thought about the consequences before you tried to drug me, I replied, definitively closing the door on any future reconciliation. Now you will face the decisions you made as the adult you are. The police car disappeared into the night, taking with it forever the son I thought I knew. The days following Adrian's arrest were a symphony of strategic decisions that would have made any corporate general pale in comparison. I didn't allow myself the luxury of melancholy. There was a second phase of my plan that required immediate and surgical execution. At 8 a.m. On the 14th of December 2024, exactly 18 hours after the arrests, I appeared at George Pierce's office with a list of legal actions that would forever change my son's financial future. George, I need you to immediately activate all the legal mechanisms we prepared, I instructed, placing a folder of previously drafted documents on his desk. Complete revocation of inheritance, exclusion from family partnerships, cancellation of guarantees and cosigns. My lawyer, experienced in complex estate litigation, reviewed each document with the meticulousness that had characterized our professional relationship for 2 decades. Evelyn, these documents are devastating, he commented, adjusting his glasses as he read. Adrian will lose access to everything. The shares of the company you sold, the dividends from the family investment fund, his stake in the commercial properties downtown. Exactly what I intend, I confirmed without hesitation. A man who tries to drug his own mother to steal $2 million doesn't deserve to benefit 1 cent from the family estate. The scale of the dispossession was systematic and complete. Adrian had been a beneficiary of multiple investments I had structured over the years to ensure his future stability. Commercial properties generating monthly rents of $4,000, stakes in investment funds with annual dividends of $15,000, family company shares valued at $800,000. What do we do about Nicole? George asked, consulting the marriage records. Technically, as Adrian's wife, she could claim rights to some marital assets. Investigate her completely, I ordered. I want to know exactly what she knew about her husband's criminal plan and when she knew it. If she was an accomplice, we'll include her in the legal actions. The report on Nicole arrived 24 hours later, courtesy of investigator Stephen Reed. The results were even more disappointing than my worst suspicions. Nicole not only fully knew about the plan to drug me, but she had actively participated in its design for weeks. Recordings of phone conversations showed her advising Adrian on the perfect timing for the operation and suggesting specific methods to temporarily incapacitate me. She even researched which drugs would be most effective without leaving detectable traces. Stephen informed me in his office, showing me transcripts that turned my stomach. She had consulted medical websites about sedation in the elderly and the effects of benzodiazepines on people over 60. But what infuriated me most were the derogatory comments she had made about me during the intercepted conversations. The old woman is getting clumsier every day, she had told Adrian on November 28th. It'll be super easy to convince her she's losing her mind if we play our cards right. That same afternoon, I summoned Nicole to my house under the pretext of discussing Adrian's situation after his arrest. She arrived, dressed in black, feigning a grief that her calculating eyes immediately betrayed. Evelyn, this is terrible, she began with a soap opera-worthy performance. I can't believe Adrian went this far. I knew nothing about his plans. I'm as shocked as you are. Sit down, Nicole, I ordered, pointing to the same sofa where I had pretended to be drugged days before. We have a lot to discuss about your financial future. Her expression subtly changed, detecting a threatening tone in my words that she hadn't expected. My financial future? I pulled the transcripts of her phone conversations from my briefcase and methodically placed them on the coffee table. Her eyes moved frantically as she read her own words printed on official paper. "The old woman is getting clumsier every day," I quoted verbatim. "It'll be super easy to convince her she's losing her mind." Do these phrases sound familiar, Nicole? The color drained completely from her face as she realized she'd been caught. Her hands trembled involuntarily as she skimmed the pages of evidence. "I also have records of your internet searches on sedating the elderly," I continued relentlessly. "Benzodiazepines, effects on older adults, combinations with alcohol to maximize incapacitation. Very educational." Nicole attempted a desperate defense. "Evelyn, I was just... Adrian asked me to research because he was worried about your mental health. It wasn't to harm you, but to understand if you were really okay." "Liar," I retorted with a coldness that surprised me. "You were an active accomplice in the conspiracy to drug me and steal my assets, and now you will face the corresponding legal consequences." I handed her a court notice that George had prepared that morning. "You are being sued civilly for complicity in attempted fraud. All your marital assets related to the Hayes family will be frozen until the case is resolved. The house where you lived, financed with my bank guarantee, will be repossessed immediately. The car you drove, acquired with a family guarantee, will return to my possession. The joint bank accounts where I had deposited money for family expenses will be frozen." "You can't do this to me," she protested, her voice breaking. "I have rights as a daughter-in-law." "You had rights as a daughter-in-law," I corrected her. "You lost them when you decided to conspire to drug the matriarch of the family. Now you only have obligations as a criminal defendant." Nicole left my house crying, understanding she had forever lost the comfortable life she had enjoyed for years, thanks to the generosity she had just betrayed. That night, sitting in my office, I calculated the full impact of my decisions. Adrian and Nicole would lose approximately $4 million in assets, income, and future expectations, a financial lesson they would remember until the last day of their lives. The trial began on the 23rd of January 2025 in the downtown courthouse, presided over by Judge Carmen Delgado, a renowned jurist specializing in family economic crimes. The courtroom was packed with journalists, onlookers, and legal professionals, drawn by the uniqueness of the case. A mother who had set a perfect trap for her own son. Adrian appeared in handcuffs, flanked by his court-appointed lawyer, a young recent graduate named Pablo Sanchez, who was clearly overwhelmed by the complexity of the case. The deep dark circles under his eyes and a noticeable weight loss showed how the 2 months of pre-trial detention had devastated my son physically and emotionally. "Your Honor," I declared from the witness stand with the composure of someone who had led business meetings for decades, "my testimony is supported by irrefutable technical evidence, digital audio recordings, forged documents seized by forensic police, and toxicological analysis of the poisoned food." The state prosecutor, Dr. Amparo Ruiz, methodically presented each piece of evidence. The recordings of Adrian's confessions echoed in the silent courtroom like funeral bells for his future. His desperate voice admitting to gambling debts, death threats, the conspiracy to drug me. "I don't care where you live. You can live on the street," the audio repeated with devastating clarity. Several attendees in the public gallery whispered expressions of shock upon hearing the naked cruelty in a son's words to his elderly mother. The defense attorney attempted a desperate strategy, claiming Adrian had acted under extreme pressure from criminals threatening his life. "My client is a victim of an illegal loan shark organization that had cornered him to a point of psychological no return," Pablo Sanchez argued, with more passion than legal standing. "And does that justify trying to drug his own mother to steal $2 million? The prosecutor retorted, with a severity that made the young lawyer tremble. "Does financial desperation make patricide a comprehensible act?" During his own testimony, Adrian attempted an emotional plea directed straight at me. "Mom, I know what I did was horrible, but I was terrified. Those men had shown me photographs of what they do to debtors. I couldn't think clearly. His tears seemed genuine, but they no longer moved me. He had crossed a line that no maternal love could forgive. "You had multiple opportunities to ask me for help, honestly," I replied from my seat. "You chose the path of betrayal and violence." The most devastating moment came when the prosecutor projected images of the forged documents Ivan Cross had prepared. The property transfer would have been completely legal once signed, stripping me of all legal protection over my home of 25 years. If this plan had succeeded, Dr. Ruiz explained to the court. Mrs. Hayes would have woken from her forced sedation to discover she no longer owned her residence. Her son could have legally evicted her the very same day. Judge Delgado listened attentively to each testimony, taking meticulous notes that would determine Adrian's future. Her experience in similar cases was evident in the precise questions she posed to each witness. Ivan Cross, the fake lawyer, had reached a plea deal with the prosecution, fully confessing his involvement in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony directly implicated Adrian as the intellectual architect of the entire operation. Young Hayes contacted me specifically seeking my services, he declared from the witness stand. He explained his plan to temporarily incapacitate his mother in detail and paid me $5,000 up front to prepare the false documentation. When it was Nicole's turn, her testimony revealed even more sordid aspects of the conspiracy. Under oath, she admitted to researching sedation methods and advising Adrian on the perfect timing to execute the plan. "We thought it was the only solution," she mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "The loan sharks had set a deadly deadline. If we didn't pay by December 15th, Adrian would have disappeared forever." "And did you ever consider asking Mrs. Hayes for help honestly?" the judge asked in a stern tone. "Adrian said his mother would never understand," Nicole replied. "That she would judge him for losing money, gambling, and that she would refuse to help him." Her words confirmed what I had suspected. They had never considered trusting me. They preferred criminal betrayal to the possibility of an honest conversation about their problems. The final verdict came on the 14th of February 2025. Judge Carmen Delgado addressed Adrian with the solemnity the historic moment required. "Adrian Hayes, this court sentences you to 4 years and 6 months in prison for the crimes of attempted aggravated fraud, use of substances to coerce, forgery of documents, and criminal conspiracy," she pronounced in a firm voice. "Additionally, you must compensate the victim with the amount of $150,000 for moral damages." My son collapsed upon hearing the sentence. 4.5 years in prison, plus the complete financial ruin I had orchestrated alongside the legal process. It was a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his days. When I left the courthouse that afternoon, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and melancholy. Justice had prevailed, but the price had been to forever lose the son I had raised with unconditional love. 8 months have passed since Adrian's sentencing, and I can state with absolute certainty that the decisions I made on that night of December 13th were the right ones. My life has undergone a profound transformation that I never would have imagined at 69 years old. On the morning of the 15th of March 2025, I reached a personal milestone. I signed the founding documents of the Michael Charles Hayes Foundation, named in honor of my late husband. This charitable institution will receive 80% of my personal estate, approximately $6.4 million, dedicated to helping elderly victims of family fraud. "Evelyn," commented the executive director I hired, Dr. Esperanza Vidal, a social worker specializing in elder protection, "your case has inspired the creation of security protocols that could protect thousands of vulnerable people across the country. The foundation operates from a modern office in a prestigious district with a team of 12 professionals, specialized lawyers, private investigators, psychologists, and social workers. During these 8 months, we have assisted 137 elderly individuals facing situations similar to mine. Every story that comes to our attention reinforces my conviction that Adrian deserved every consequence of his criminal acts. Children who empty the bank accounts of parents with dementia, granddaughters who forge wills, sons-in-law who emotionally manipulate lonely in-laws. Family greed is a silent epidemic that devastates homes across the nation. The most satisfying aspect of my new existence is the correspondence I maintain with the victims we have helped. Handwritten letters of gratitude from elderly people who recovered stolen properties, photographs of families who reunited after resolving inheritance conflicts, testimonies from people who learned to protect themselves from predators disguised as relatives. Your courage to confront your own son has given hope to many people who thought they were condemned to silence, wrote Mrs. Pilar Hernandez, an 82-year-old widow whose grandchildren tried to swindle her out of her apartment with forged documents. However, not all the transformations in my life have been external. The first few months after the trial, I experienced episodes of deep melancholy that forced me to seek professional psychological help. Dr. Cristina Moreno, a psychologist specializing in family grief, helped me process the loss of the son I thought I knew. "Evelyn, you didn't lose a son," she explained during one of our sessions. "You discovered that the person you thought was your son never really existed. The grief you're experiencing is for a relationship that turned out to be an illusion." Her words were liberating. I understood that my pain wasn't for having destroyed Adrian, but for discovering that the Adrian I loved was a mental construction based on maternal expectations, not on the reality of his character. Over the last few months, I have received exactly 17 letters from Adrian from prison. They all remain unopened in a drawer of my desk. Their content is irrelevant. Nothing he could write would change the fundamental nature of his actions. Nicole, for her part, has tried to contact me 3 times through common intermediaries. She lost the house, the car, and all the financial benefits she had enjoyed as a member of my family. She currently works as a cashier in a supermarket, earning $1,200 a month, a practical lesson on the consequences of betrayal. The most comforting element of my new reality is the relationship I've developed with Mary Jo Ruiz, a 65-year-old widow I met during a conference on asset protection for the elderly. She lost her husband 3 years ago to cancer and was also the victim of an attempted scam by a greedy nephew. "Evelyn, I admire your strength to do the right thing, even when it was painful," she commented during one of our Sunday walks through the park. Many people would have forgiven out of emotional weakness, allowing the criminals to continue abusing our kindness. Mary Jo understands my decision because she also had to take legal action against a relative who tried to misappropriate her late husband's survivor benefits. Her emotional support has been fundamental to my personal healing process. On Sunday mornings, we have breakfast together on my terrace, the same terrace where Adrian used to ask me calculated questions about my assets. Now that terrace is a space of peace where Mary Jo and I plan activities for the foundation and share reflections on the second chance life has offered us. "Do you ever regret being so hard on Adrian?" she asked me 2 weeks ago. "Never," I replied without hesitation. A mother who allows her son to drug and rob her is not exercising love, but criminal complicity. I taught him the most important lesson of his life. Actions have consequences, even when the victims are the people who love you most. This morning, while reviewing the Foundation's financial statements, I calculated that our charitable activities have protected approximately $12 million in assets for vulnerable elderly people. $12 million that would have ended up in the hands of family fraudsters if we hadn't intervened. Adrian will serve his full sentence. There will be no pardons, no reconciliations, no second chances. He learned that betraying family trust has a price that is paid for a lifetime. And I, at 70, have discovered that true motherhood does not consist of protecting children from the consequences of their actions, but in making sure those consequences are severe enough to prevent them from committing similar crimes in the future. Justice, when applied with intelligence and determination, can be the purest form of a mother's love.